You ever walk into a room and immediately feel the energy shift? Because she walked in, not because she was loud, not because she was showing off, but because she carried something you can't fake. A presence, a quiet authority, a power that doesn't ask for permission to exist. That's confidence. And in 2025, it doesn't come from followers, filters, or applause. It comes from something much deeper. Something forged, not gifted. So listen closely, because these 7 rules, they're not suggestions. They are the code every confident girl lives by. And if you master them, you won't just walk into the room. You'll own it. Rule 1, she controls her narrative. In a world drowning in opinions, a confident woman doesn't wait for someone to tell her who she is. She decides. She knows the difference between someone's perception and her truth. That means when people try to label her, too strong, quiet, too ambitious, too emotional, she doesn't flinch. She doesn't defend. She doesn't dilute. Because she's done the inner work. She's faced her insecurities, stared down her fears, and chosen to walk anyway. She's rewritten the story others tried to give her, and now she lives by her own script. Word for word. Rule 2. She speaks last, but her words land first. Confidence isn't noise. It's precision. A confident girl doesn't need to dominate the conversation. She listens, observes, reads the room. And when she finally speaks, people stop scrolling, stop talking, stop thinking about themselves, and listen. Not because she's loud, but because her words are sharp, clear, intentional. She's not performing. She's not people-pleasing. She's leading. Because every word she speaks carries weight. And she knows that power isn't in being heard. It's in being remembered. She writes her own story. And that changes everything. You see, the world will try to hand you a script the moment you show up. Parents, teachers, strangers, even friends, they all come with expectations. Be quiet. Don't be too loud. Don't be too ambitious. Smile more. Apologize when you're right. Dim your light so others don't feel uncomfortable. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your whole life performing someone else's version of you. That's where most people lose themselves. Not in one big moment, but in 1,000 tiny compromises they never questioned. But the confident girl, she's done accepting someone else's script. She's the author of her life, and she edits ruthlessly. She doesn't shrink to make others feel safe. She doesn't adjust her identity to be liked. She doesn't let anyone's judgment become her reflection. And it's not because she's arrogant. It's because she's awake. She's awake to who she is, what she values, and what she will no longer tolerate. She's done playing roles that drain her, and she's done keeping quiet to make the insecure feel powerful. Every decision she makes, from how she dresses to how she speaks to how she carries herself, is built from intention, not imitation, and yes, it takes guts. It takes walking through criticism, rejection, and misunderstanding. It means being called too much, or not enough, and still standing tall anyway. But the truth is, once you own your narrative, nobody can use it against you. Once you stop needing permission to exist fully, nobody can control you. That's not just confidence, that's power. And the girls who get this, the ones who rip up the scripts and write their own pages, they don't just change their lives, they change the game. She speaks with purpose, not for attention. That's the difference. In a world obsessed with being seen, the confident girl isn't chasing the spotlight. She becomes it. And it's not because she's the loudest in the room, it's because when she talks, people listen, not of obligation, out of respect. She's not impulsive with her words, she's precise, calculated. She doesn't fill silence just to feel important. She doesn't rush to respond just to be heard, she listens fully. And then, when she does speak, it cuts through the noise like a blade. Clean, sharp, undeniable. Because she understands something most people don't. Power isn't in how much you talk. It's in the impact of what you say. Weakness screams. Strength whispers. And confidence knows exactly when to do both. She's not reacting to every jab, every opinion, every moment that tries to pull her off center. She knows that emotional discipline is a form of dominance. You want to rattle her? Good luck. Her stillness is stronger than most people's storms. She doesn't argue to prove herself. She doesn't explain herself to be accepted. Her truth doesn't require approval. That's why when she speaks, it shifts the room. Her voice isn't laced with insecurity. It's anchored in certainty. And that certainty, That's what makes people lean in. Not because she's performing, but because she's real. Because when a woman speaks with conviction, not ego, not fear, but grounded clarity, it lands differently. It stays with you. It demands attention without asking for it. That's not just communication, that's power. And she knows it. She protects her peace with unshakable boundaries. And let me tell you something most people won't. Being kind doesn't mean being available. Being strong doesn't mean being a doormat. A confident girl understands that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're gates to protect what matters. And she guards that gate with clarity, not apology. She's not afraid to say no. She doesn't stutter, she doesn't over-explain, and she doesn't feel guilty for prioritizing her mental, emotional, and physical space. Because she knows exactly what happens when you don't set limits. People will take as much as you give. They will drain you, distract you, and disguise their entitlement as love. But she's done playing that game. She's not afraid to disappoint someone else to stay loyal to herself. She doesn't stay in draining conversations, one-sided relationships, or environments that shrink her spirit. The moment something feels off, she doesn't wait for it to explode. She checks it. Directly, calmly, unapologetically. And it's not about being harsh. It's about being healthy. She doesn't lash out, she simply exits. She doesn't argue, she enforces. Because peace isn't something she hopes for, it's something she protects. That boundary she sets, that's self-respect in motion. That silence she gives, that's her choosing power over performance. She's not here to be liked by everyone. She's here to live without regret. And that starts by deciding exactly what she allows into her life. And what she doesn't. She's built from failure, not fear. And that's what most people never understand. Confidence doesn't come from never falling. It comes from falling, getting wrecked, being underestimated, and getting back up anyway. Again and again. A confident girl doesn't fear failure because she's already faced it. She's lived through the rejection, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the disappointment that tried to break her. And she came out sharper, more aware, more resilient. She doesn't carry shame from the fall. She carries the strength it gave her. She doesn't flinch when things don't go her way. She doesn't break down when the outcome isn't perfect. She adjusts. She recalibrates. She asks, what did this teach me? Not, why did this happen to me? That's the difference. Most people let failure define them. She lets it refine her. And it's not just the big failures either. It's the small daily hits, the subtle rejections, the moments she doubts herself, but still shows up. That repetition, that's where her edge is built. Not in comfort, not in easy wins, but in the grit it takes to keep showing up when nobody's clapping, when no one's watching, when quitting would be easier. And she's not fearless. She's trained. She's taught herself that fear isn't a stop sign. It's a signal. It means she's stretching, expanding, leveling up, so she doesn't run from it. She walks into it with eyes wide open. Because the most powerful women don't avoid failure. They partner with it. They use it. They build with it. And when people ask where her confidence comes from, she doesn't give them some polished, feel-good answer. She tells the truth. I've been through enough to know I can handle what's next. That's not ego. That's earned. She does not perform for approval. That's where her real power lies. She's not here to fit into a mold someone else made. She's not curating her life to be digestible. She doesn't shrink herself to be liked, and she doesn't inflate herself to impress. She's not adjusting her voice, her values, or her vision just to blend in, because once you start living for claps, for comments, for validation, you lose yourself in the noise. And a confident girl knows attention isn't affirmation. Popularity isn't purpose. She walks into rooms not wondering, will they like me? But standing grounded in, do I respect who I'm being right now? She doesn't wear the mask. She doesn't need the spotlight. She's not driven by needing to be seen. She's driven by who she becomes in the dark when no one's watching. That's where her identity is forged. In discipline. In character. In the small, silent choices that build integrity. The way she talks to herself when she fails. The way she follows through when it's hard. The way she refuses to compromise her values just to belong. And make no mistake, people will question her. They'll label her as difficult, cold, intimidating. But she doesn't flinch. She doesn't twist herself into something softer just to be palatable. She stays rooted, because the people who matter, they don't need her to perform. They respect her authenticity. And the ones who can't handle her truth, they were never meant to sit at her table. So she doesn't play the game. She owns the room by being exactly who she is. Without asking for permission, that's not confidence born from applause. That's confidence born from alignment. She chooses her circle with precision, because she understands that not everyone who smiles at you is in your corner, and not everyone who claps is celebrating you. A confident girl doesn't let just anyone have access to her mind, her time, her energy. She's deliberate, selective, unapologetic about who gets close, because she knows energy is contagious. So if someone's chaotic, negative, constantly pulling her into their storms, she doesn't try to fix it. She steps away, quietly, clearly, with full conviction. She doesn't surround herself with people who only show up when it's convenient or when she's winning. She watches how they move when she's not in the room. She pays attention to how they react when she levels up. If it's competition instead of celebration, she's out. If it's silence when she needs support, she's done. Because her standards aren't based on loyalty by history. They're based on alignment by character. She's not afraid to walk alone, because she understands that peace is more valuable than company. She's walked the road of pleasing people who only drained her. She's given chances to those who only took. And now, she doesn't explain why she's distancing herself. She just does it. Because she knows this truth in your circle either feeds your flame or suffocates it, and she refuses to be surrounded by people who keep her small just so they can feel big. So she builds a tribe of real ones. Women who challenge her. People who keep her sharp. Voices that push her higher. No envy, no backhanded compliments. Just presence, growth, and truth. Because when you walk with the right ones, you don't just feel supported, you feel unstoppable. And that kind of connection, it's not luck, it's choice. A confident girl doesn't hope for it. She curates it. Relentlessly, she owns her femininity like a weapon. Not a weakness, not a performance, but a force. You can feel it when she walks into the room. It's not just how she moves, it's how she holds herself, how she carries both softness and steel in the same breath. She doesn't hide the fact that she's emotional, empathetic, nurturing. She doesn't see those as vulnerabilities. She sees them as tactical advantages, because the world taught us that to be strong, we had to become hard. But a confident woman, she's mastered the art of being both. She knows when to lean into her fire and when to lead with grace. And she doesn't apologize for either. She's not shrinking herself to be less intimidating, and she's not puffing herself up to seem more powerful. She's not confused. She doesn't have to become someone else to be taken seriously. She doesn't strip away her softness to be accepted in rooms full of egos and noise. She shows up whole, fully expressed, grounded in both her intuition and her intellect. And that balance, that's what keeps people off balance around her, because they can't box her in. They can't label her. One moment, she's speaking with warmth and care, and the next, she's delivering truth like a blade. You don't see it coming. That's what makes it powerful. She's emotionally intelligent, not emotionally reactive. She knows how to regulate her feelings instead of dumping them. She listens with intent. She observes with depth. Her instincts are sharp, her awareness is acute, and she's learned to trust what she feels, even when logic tries to override it. That gut sense women are born with. She's honed it. She's no longer second, guessing herself to make others more comfortable. That's the difference between someone who performs confidence and someone who is confidence. One needs approval to feel worthy. The other already knows. She's not afraid to take up space. Not physically, not emotionally, not mentally. She's done playing small in conversations so others won't feel threatened. She's done with false modesty, with downplaying her achievements so she's not called arrogant. She owns what she brings to the table. She's proud of what she's built. She doesn't need to broadcast it, but she won't hide it either. And that quiet confidence, that's what commands respect. Because when you meet a woman who knows her worth, not just recites it, you feel it. You see it in how she walks away from anything that doesn't serve her. You see it in how she demands reciprocity without saying a word. And she doesn't separate beauty from power. She doesn't let the world convince her that she has to choose. She can lead a boardroom in heels, speak fire with lipstick on, and walk through life knowing that femininity is not an obstacle to power. It is power. She's not trying to be one of the boys. She's not chasing masculine energy to prove her strength. She brings something else, an energy that disrupts and disarms at the same time, an energy that says, I'm not here to compete with you. I'm here to be fully myself, and that's more than enough. She doesn't chase attention, true strength. She doesn't need the room to validate her existence. She's magnetic because she doesn't care who's watching. Her power isn't derived from external reaction. It's rooted in internal truth. She knows who she is when no one's clapping. She knows who she is when the lights are off, when she's at her lowest, when she's alone in her thoughts. That's the version she trusts the most. That's the version she's built everything on. And yes, she's emotional. She feels things deeply, but she doesn't let those emotions own her. She's turned them into strategy, into insight, into vision. She's not a mess of feelings. She's a master of them. And that emotional depth, that's what makes her dangerous in all the right ways. Because she sees through people, through pretense, through performance. She can sit across from someone smiling and know something's off. Because she's trained herself to listen beyond the noise. That's what makes her a leader, not because she dominates, but because she connects. She understands the human behind the mask. She makes people feel seen, and that's something no amount of power can fake. She's not perfect. She doesn't pretend to be, but she shows up real. Always, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs her, because her integrity is not for sale. Her femininity isn't a costume she puts on when it's convenient. It's the core of her, and she refuses to dull it, toughen it, or twist it to meet anyone else's expectations. She's not in competition with other women. She lifts them. She recognizes them. She sees their light as a reflection, not a threat. Because a woman who is secure in her own presence doesn't fear another woman's power. She honors it. She doesn't ask for space. She creates it. And when she walks in, she doesn't just blend in. She raises the standard, not by saying she's better, but by being so deeply in alignment with who she is. It forces other people to question why they aren't doing the same. That's the power of a woman who owns her femininity unapologetically. She becomes a mirror, and when people look at her, they either feel inspired or exposed. She's disciplined, not just with her goals, but with her emotions, her habits, her self-talk. She knows what she feeds herself, mentally, emotionally, physically. Creates the version of her that shows up every day. She doesn't indulge in victimhood. She doesn't glamorize struggle. She faces her pain, she learns from it, and she transforms it. That's how she stays powerful even in seasons of weakness. Not because she doesn't feel fear, but because she's trained herself to move through it without losing herself in it. She's not chasing being liked. She's chasing being aligned. And in that alignment, she becomes unshakable. She'll cry if she needs to. She'll walk away without making a scene. She'll stand her ground without raising her voice. And in that quiet resistance, in that calm refusal to betray herself just to be accepted, that's where her real power lies. Not in being louder, not in being harder, but in being exactly who she is, fully, relentlessly, beautifully. That's the woman who rewrites the rules. Not the one who abandons her femininity to succeed, but the one who reclaims it as her advantage. The one who knows that empathy is not weakness. That vulnerability is not fragility. That her voice, her intuition, her nurturing, her strength, they don't cancel each other out. They coexist. They fuel each other. They make her unstoppable. And the world can't figure her out because they've never seen someone so soft be so unbreakable. But she doesn't need them to understand. She didn't become this woman for them. She became this woman for herself. She became her own protector, her own standard, her own blueprint. And now she walks through life like a storm with a soft touch, dangerous in all the ways that matter. She leads with calm, not chaos. And that calm, it's not weakness. It's control. It's command. It's the kind of presence that shifts the energy in a room without saying a word. She doesn't need to dominate to prove she's in charge. She doesn't rely on volume to assert authority. She understands that true power doesn't panic. True power doesn't flinch under pressure. It leans in. It gets sharper. It slows down when everyone else speeds up. She's learned that reactivity is a trap. The moment you let someone pull you out of your center, they own you. And she refuses to be owned. People try to provoke her, test her, get her to crack. And she doesn't take the bait. She's not easily rattled because she's grounded in something deeper than emotion. She's trained herself to respond, not react, to think, not just feel, to observe, not absorb. And when the fire starts, she doesn't throw gasoline. She walks through with her high and her voice steady, because composure is her armor. She's the one people look to when things go sideways. Not because she has all the answers, but because she's anchored. She doesn't spin out, she assesses, she listens. And then, when she speaks, it's with clarity, not confusion. She doesn't let chaos rush her. She understands that urgency often leads to mistakes, to missteps, to saying things that can't be taken back. And she values her integrity too much to speak from impulse. So she pauses, she breathes, she keeps her power close until it's time to release it with precision. That calmness, it's earned. It comes from everything she's been through and refused to let break her. It comes from facing storms and realizing she didn't need to outscream them. She just needed to outlast them. She doesn't fight every battle she's invited to. She knows some wars are designed to distract her, to drain her, so she stays focused, doesn't chase chaos, doesn't entertain drama, doesn't allow noise to determine her next move. She's not cold, she's calculated, not heartless, but strategic. Her calm isn't a mask, it's a message. It tells the worlding, you can try to shake me, but I don't break under pressure. I sharpen. And that's the kind of woman people don't see coming. The one who doesn't flinch when threatened. The one who doesn't escalate when pushed. The one who doesn't lose herself just because someone else has. She stays in control of her energy, her words, her response. And in a world that's constantly yelling, constantly reacting, constantly spinning, her stillness is what makes her unforgettable. She's unafraid to walk alone. That's the kind of confidence most people pretend to have but can't hold when silence hits. Because here's the truth. Most people cling to crowds, not because they feel empowered, but because they're afraid of what it means to stand by themselves. But not her. She's made peace with solitude. She's stood in the quiet, in the absence of validation, and found strength in the stillness. She doesn't need constant company to feel complete. She doesn't need a group to feel grounded. She walks alone not because she has to, but because she chooses to when the path no longer aligns with who she is becoming. She's learned that loneliness and solitude are not the same. One drains you, the other builds you. One comes from fear, the other from freedom. And she chooses freedom, because she refuses to dilute herself to stay included. She refuses to pretend, to compromise, to perform, just to keep a seat at someone else's table. If the price of belonging is abandoning her values, her peace, her identity, then she's gone before they even realize it. She knows what it costs to betray yourself, and she's not willing to pay that price anymore. She's not afraid to outgrow the room. She's not afraid to evolve past people. She's not afraid to rise, even if she has to do it without applause. People might look at her and think she's distant, detached, hard to access. But they're wrong. She's not unreachable. She's just unavailable to anything that doesn't honor her. She knows that clinging to what's familiar just because it's comfortable is a trap. And she's not interested in comfort. She's interested in growth, and growth often requires isolation. That's when you hear your own voice clearly. That's when you learn who you are without the noise, without the expectations, without the distractions that convince you to settle for less than you deserve. She doesn't panic when people leave. She doesn't crumble when things shift. She understands that seasons change, and people are not always meant to stay. She doesn't take it personally. She doesn't beg for attention or chase closure. She lets people walk. And if walking away means walking alone for a while, she does it with her head high, because she knows who she is. She knows what she brings, and she knows that sometimes solitude is the price of sovereignty. She's not lonely, she's focused, she's not bitter, she's building. Alone doesn't mean broken. It means undistracted, and while others seek crowds to validate their existence, she builds in the quiet, prepares in the dark, and rises in her own time. So when the world finally sees her glow, they'll call it sudden, but she'll know it was forged in silence, in solitude, and in strength no one else saw. That's what separates her, not her need to be surrounded, but her ability to walk alone without losing her direction, her dignity, or her fire. She evolves constantly. That's her edge. She's not trying to stay the same version of herself to make others comfortable. She's not here to be consistent for the sake of predictability. She's here to grow, to shed, to unlearn, to rise. And she does it relentlessly. She doesn't resist change. She chases it. She sees it for what it really is, not something to fear, but something that reveals who's really paying attention to their life. Because the moment you decide to stay where it's safe, where it's easy, where it's familiar, you start dying in pieces. And she's not here to survive. She's here to thrive. She's constantly auditing herself, her habits, her thoughts, her language, her choices, not because she's insecure, but because she's disciplined. She checks herself more than anyone else checks her. She doesn't wait for rock bottom to realign. She doesn't wait for life to force her to grow. She chooses it every day, whether it's adjusting her environment, letting go of someone she's outgrown, or pushing herself past her own limitations. She moves. She pivots. She doesn't cling to what once worked if it's no longer serving her. And that adaptability, that's what makes her unstoppable. She's not married to the old version of herself. She doesn't hold on to who she was just to be liked by people who knew her then. She understands that evolution comes with loss. Sometimes you have to grieve the parts of yourself that once kept you safe, but now keep you stuck. And she's willing to do that. She's willing to outgrow the opinions, the relationships, the stories she told herself just to protect her comfort zone. Because she doesn't live in the past. She uses it, but she doesn't worship it. She's not interested in arriving, she's interested in becoming. That means she's constantly curious, constantly learning, constantly stretching herself into discomfort, because that's where her next level lives. She seeks out people who challenge her, books that confront her, environments that demand more of her. She doesn't protect her ego, she upgrades her identity, and when she hears feedback, she doesn't get defensive, she listens, filters, extracts what's useful. She's secure enough to evolve without it threatening her worth. And the world may not always understand her pace. They'll say she's changed, that she's different now, that she doesn't fit in like she used to. And they're right. She has changed. Because staying the same for their comfort was never the goal. She didn't come here to be predictable. She came here to evolve into everything she was meant to be. Every version of her was necessary. But none of them were permanent. And the moment she felt herself shrinking, repeating, plateauing, she burned that version down and rebuilt. That kind of evolution, it's intentional, it's painful, it's personal, it's lonely, but it's worth it, because every time she upgrades, she walks closer to her purpose. She doesn't wait for new years or a breakdown to shift. She builds in real time, quietly, consistently, powerfully. She doesn't need to announce it. You'll feel it when she enters the room. You'll hear it in her voice. You'll see it in her presence. That's not just growth. That's self-leadership, and that's what makes her dangerous in the best way. She's never done. She's never stagnant. She's always one decision, one challenge, one transformation away from her next level. And she embraces it, no matter what it costs. That's the woman the world doesn't see coming. Not because she's hiding, but because she's building. Quietly, relentlessly, intentionally. She's not just confident, she's unshakable. Not because she never doubts, never falls, never breaks, but because she refuses to stay there. She writes her own story. She speaks with impact. She protects her peace, learns from failure, and lives without performing. She chooses her circle with intention, owns her femininity like the force it is, leads with calm, walks alone when necessary, and evolves without needing permission. She doesn't chase the crown. She already wears it. Not on her head, but in the way she carries herself, commands respect, and never compromises her truth. That's what it means to be powerful in 2025. Not loud, not perfect, but real. And if you're ready to stop playing small, stop apologizing, and start stepping into that version of you, the one who owns her power unapologetically, then understand this: no one's going to hand it to you. You've got to take it. Build it. Live it, one rule at a time.